Hello and welcome to part 2 of this Andel bug box build. Now onto the doors. These are super glued inside the carriage over the glazing strip. Care must be taken not to get super glue onto any visible parts of the glazing from the outside, because the super glue can cloud over the glazing. Next, onto the window frames. These can be fitted in closed or open positions. Andel suggests cutting them down in order to get the open positions. Much care must be taken here when supergluing to get the superglue only on the edges of the window frames, so as not to cloud over the glazing once again. A small test piece of the glazing strip can be glued together, so as to see if it is affected by the superglue, as some are glazing friendly. The fitting of the windows continues. I fitted several into the open positions, but I didn't cut them down as suggested in the instructions, instead leaving them whole, so I had a larger surface which could be superglued at the bottom without this being visible from the outside of the glazing. Now the smoke alarm is going off. I believe someone was burning some food downstairs in the kitchen, but not to worry about that. My knife stopped working just then. A spare was handy. It's always good to have a spare knife when building models, and plenty of tools to hand. The watch, as you can see, is still ticking round, and we've been building for 55 minutes by now. So the glazing can be cut out from above the open windows, so that they are indeed open, and that's just done quite easily with the knife. Once again cleaned out with a knife to give a nice flush finish. The windows look really quite good on this carriage. Now onto the construction of the roof. The roof inner is glued to the roof centrally, and it's very important to get it central. So, super glue applied across the roof, and then that is stuck down. A lot of attention is paid to the corners as well. A bit more glue here and there. One of the real advantages of super glue is one can hold things in place while it is actually sticking. The roof is removable, which is a feature I really like about this kit. I like to have removable roofs on all my stock, so I can get in and detail the carriage with passengers or any interior detailing. So yes, it's removable. A nice fit, held in place by the roof inner. That's all good. Now onto the lamp body, which sits on top of the roof. All the components, or the smaller components, are held in little plastic resealable bags to keep them not getting lost. So the lamp is glued to the top of itself, and then to the roof. Make sure this is central, something I got wrong and took off and re-glued. Always helpful to get it right the first time. Next is the chassis assembly. The body is put to one side, and the chassis rails are found. Now the axle boxes are orientated so that they are facing upwards and are flush to the outside. There's the smoke alarm again, I apologise for that. Now 45mm and 32mm gauge axles are supplied, which is, so you can build it into any gauge you want. I'm 45mm, so I use the 45mm gauge axles. Now these are assembled onto the chassis rails with some washers on the outside, and the wheels, which are a press fit, a very tight fit. I can't imagine them ever coming off again. I used a pair of pliers very carefully to push the wheels down onto the axles. Again, a very simple way of doing it, very easy to construct. Make sure that the flanges are the right way in. It's an easy mistake to make. It's important. So, just testing the chassis with the body on a piece of my rather fine scale gauge 1 track. The chassis is a nice rolling chassis. It's the fire alarm again, I apologise. So, now to assemble the chassis into the cavity in the bottom of the body. Quick adjustment of the light levels, and we'll be off. Just adjusting the light so we can see exactly what goes on. So, Andel supply the body with 2 lines on it, there, and a badge in the middle to centre the axles, and the chassis centrally on the floor. So with that in mind, we can then apply a decent amount of super glue, careful not to get it on any of the moving parts, and assemble them in. The space is quite tight on 45mm gauge, but it can be done as shown with a bit more super glue there. Just checking all the time that the wheels can freely rotate with the piece of track again there. So that's all done. Now it was on to the door handles and exterior detailing. The watch there we've now been building for around an hour and 20 minutes. So putting the body of the carriage to one side, we can get on to the handles. Now Andel supply a length of chain which is cut into 2 individual links and 2 half links to create the door handle. Quick reading the instructions there, and these are assembled with a dab of glue into the holes, 1.5mm holes drilled in the body earlier. Very simple construction, very effective, it looks really nice. Andel also supply some brass rod which is bent up into the grab rails, which then are bent to fit the holes drilled in the carriage body. Bit fiddly, but looks really nice. Plenty of brass rod is supplied, so I should imagine you could do about 4 bug boxes with the amount of rod that is supplied. And there is the carriage, vastly complete. Just now onto the couplings. So I got a carriage of my own, an IP Engineering carriage, in order to measure the height that the coupling should be placed at. Couplings are supplied in the kit, as with all Andel kits, and these are simply super glued at the correct height, having checked the height with the rest of your stock. The couplings are actually smaller than the usual Andel couplings. They're quite nicely proportioned, I think, with the usual underneath chain and hook for coupling to other Andel wagons and carriages, but also the hook for coupling to normal 3-link centre couplings. And there it is. That's the bug box done in only 1.5 hours. There's it with a small passenger train and my roundhouse millie. Now for a few shots of the bug box at my local model engineering club in the snow. I hope you enjoyed this bug box build, and I hope it's helped you to build a bug box or to make up your mind about buying one. Thank you very much indeed for watching. The kit costs £36, with wheels, axles and couplings all included. A very reasonable price for a very delightful model, I'm sure you will agree.